Hey guys, back again. So today I want to talk about Horror Noire, A History of Black Horror, which is a documentary on Shudder. Now, this one came kind of as a surprise to me because I did a podcast with Desmond from Desmond's Flicks, and afterwards we talked about movies, and he mentioned this that just came out, I think literally close to the same time we had that podcast. So I went immediately on to Shudder and watched it because that actually sounds really cool. Like, just a history of, like, African Americans in horror. That's a really cool idea. I like that. I like seeing, because I know that they weren't treated very nicely in the first place in terms of how they looked, in terms of how they made them look on film, whenever film was first being made in the 1920s. So it's a really interesting thing to see the transition from how mistreated on film they were, and then as nowadays, it's like anybody, like any other human being, they're treated way better and wonderfully. So that's what I love about seeing the transition from the history of African Americans being in film to now. It was a horrible time then, and now it's great now for them, and I love that. So, yeah, like I said, from the 1920s to the 1950s, they were not treated very well in terms of film and other reasons, obviously, but they didn't have a say to how they were treated on film. So there was a lot of incredibly racist shit on that they did for movies because they didn't think that they had any say, which, again, I'm so thankful that it's just away from that, because even though it's weird and awkward to see this type of stuff nowadays, even though there is obviously racism in the world, unfortunately there still is, it's still interesting to see how like film started in terms of the eyes of an African American. That's really unique and really fun, or really cool. Not fun, but really cool. And there were a lot of really bad racist movies that they talked about in this documentary. Like, there was one film in particular where it was talking about how these black people in that movie literally mated with gorillas to make a gorilla baby, and that just is in its own thought, just like, it's hard to even think about, because it is so, to me, just so outrageously racist that, like, it's so hard to watch. And, like, just them talking about it, it's just so weird, because it's just like, how do you talk about something that is that awkward and that racist? Like, and it's horrible, and it's so weird to have that type of film. And even though it's not right, it's interesting to go back and have them talk about that kind of movie, because it's something that is not okay today. And I really like just seeing that progression, and a great progression from being that to now. And I really liked how they also brought up Night of the Living Dead a lot, where Dwayne Jones is the main character of that, and he is one of the first African American characters in film that wasn't like, he was the main character. He was literally the main character of the movie, and he was a character who, with his performance, he did what he wanted. He was the hero of the movie. He wasn't considered a villain like they would have in earlier films starring African Americans. But I really do like that they brought that up, because I didn't realize that Dwayne Jones, his character was, or maybe that's his name in the movie. I don't even remember, honestly, because I have only seen Night of the Living Dead once, and I want to rewatch it again for this channel, but I do like that they brought this up, because that's an interesting tidbit of history. Like, that's cool that this is the first movie that we get where, like, we get a really strong black lead in the movie, and that's really awesome. And I like that he's a hero, and I remember in this movie that he was really good and really, really a great hero, even though by the end of the movie he didn't win. And they mentioned that in the documentary, but I thought that it's great seeing that, and it was a great first real African American character on screen, as opposed to being a racist caricature of, like, African Americans before that. So I love that this is one of the first, and that's really cool. So I really like that, and then I liked how they went into Blaxploitation, where they had a lot of Blaxploitation movies in the 60s, 70s, 80s, where they were just really like they. I haven't really seen any Blaxploitation movies. I know they are, but they all look really fun and just really just entertaining. And I like that they got that boom afterwards. Like, yeah, we finally can have a say, and I love that. I love that they finally got their got what the white people had too. Like, they got films that gave characters that were good and that were heroes, and they had their own say. I love that. And I also liked how they mentioned in this that usually when it comes to voodoo in movies, like, it's usually the African American character that has this trait, and it's usually considered evil or bad or discerning. And I kind of noticed that throughout movies with African American characters that use voodoo, but I didn't feel like it. Like, I didn't think that it was that big of a that big of a thing, and apparently it is. Like, I didn't realize how many characters that are African American in movies using voodoo. It looks bad on their part, and again, it's just one of those kind of cliches that needs to kind of go away, because it's not really cool. It makes them look bad, and I don't like that either. So I really like that they go into this deep history, and I really thought that it was very unique and interesting, because all of these people in the actually being interviewed, like Spike Lee, and I really like how all these people, and also all these other actors from big horror movies, like they mentioned the kid from The People Underneath the Stairs, the guy from Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4 is in this, and Jordan Peele is in this, and I really love so much that they of course bring in Get Out at the end of the documentary, because Get Out is one of those movies where, to me, and growing up not as an African American, I feel like I don't think I will truly understand. It's just one of those things in life. It's like being a man or a woman. If you are one of these sexes, you are not going to fully ever understand what the other sex, like, what they have gone through. And the same thing with color too. It's like I'll never truly know how it feels, and I love how we have Get Out now. We have this movie that really, whether you are black or white, whatever, it completely gives such a fantastic way of saying that this is what it's like being an African American around a group of white people. I kind of understand a little more, even though I'm not born that way. I feel like I understand a little bit more, even though I never truly will understand. But I love how Jordan Peele gave a movie to us that, no matter what color you are, you can understand, like, this. You can understand the situation. You can understand what this is, and I really do love that a lot. I think that's great that Jordan Peele was brought into this, and I love that they also mentioned Us that's coming out soon, which I'm really incredibly excited for. I loved Get Out, and I can't wait for Us. But yeah, I really thought this was a very interesting documentary on just how throughout the ages African Americans were treated throughout on film, and again, of course, it starts out in a horrible place where they're not treated right, but I love the fact that as time went on, like everything else, like women, like gay people, like all of these different groups of people in the world that have dealt with issues like this, whether in film and how they are treated in film. I love how all these groups of people are all getting their share. They're all getting great movies with great, strong characters. Like, I really, again, Get Out. Get Out was a fantastic movie. Like, I really loved this documentary just because it really did a fantastic job of really showing the history of it and how horrible it was to how great it has become. So I really love this. This is a really great documentary, and really definitely worth watching because, and especially if you're just a fan of horror in general, they show so many clips and have so many actors from horror movies. Like Tony Todd's also in this as well. And they refer to all these horror films that I've seen or have not seen, and I really love just the callbacks to talking about them. Like the guy from Friday the 13th Part 5 is in this too. And I liked them talking about him being killed off in Part 5. And they also bring up the thing about, oh, the black guy always gets killed in horror movies. And yeah, that's another cliche that needs to go away, but I noticed it more because they talked about it in this as opposed to just noticing it on my own. So again, I loved how very informative and very interesting this was, and I really loved just all the interviews, all the clips. It was integrated very well. So this is a really awesome watch. If you guys have not seen this, go watch it if you have Shudder. This is a really incredibly worth it. Whether you're a fan of horror, whether you're a fan of film history, this is a really fantastic watch. So I really loved Horror Noire. So tell me down below if you've seen Horror Noire, a history of black horror, and thank you guys so much for watching.